Hi guys, welcome to this Basics of Form workshop. So today we're just going to be going over sort of two exercises, one that's a little bit like a lecture and exercise, and another one that's just kind of like applying what we learn in the first stage. So it's going to be split into two sections. The first part of the course we're going to be working on a sphere, so kind of creating a sphere and looking at how shadows and halftones interact. So we'll be looking at how you place shadows onto a drawing. So you sort of find shapes within a drawing, place shadows, develop those shadows, and then add halftones. And then once you've sort of added your halftones, that's when you start to kind of create a sense of 3D form. So that's why we're starting with a really simple shape. So this circle that I've got drawn on my page. But I'll just quickly go over, I don't have a very strict materials list for this workshop because it's basically just some paper and some pencils, but I'll tell you what I'm working with. So I've just got some white paper taped up onto a drawing board, but you can use a sketchbook or a drawing board if you like. And then I'm just using a mixture of, I'm not sure if I'll use it actually, but I've got a graphite stick, so like a graphite stick pencil, which is just like a pencil, a standard pencil, and then I'm also using a mechanical pencil with an HB lead, but pretty much anything like a 2B, B, 3B, 4B, any type of pencil will be fine. I've also got just a small piece of kneadable eraser, but any type of eraser will be okay. And that's pretty much it. So it's super stripped back what we're using today. You might need some tape if you're working from a drawing board. But yeah, that's pretty much it for materials. As I say, these are just exercises, so it's not as though we're creating a finished piece of art. And I'm going to be using my iPad for the reference, but for the first portion of the drawing, we're just going to be kind of working through the concepts of how form works and how you can make something look three-dimensional with shadows and halftones. So the first thing I'll get you guys to do, I've already kind of sketched mine in, but if you just put a circle onto your paper, so basically any type of circle, you can use like a jar or a glass to draw it if you're not confident drawing a good circle by hand. That's totally fine. But basically just a 2D circle, just lightly sketched in on the paper. I'm going to zoom my camera in while you're doing that because I'm going to work up close with it. Focus my camera. And there we go. Yes, I'll give you another minute or so just to get your circle down. I'm going to work fairly slowly through this workshop because it's a sort of basics course. And you guys can let me know if I'm moving too quickly at any point. So now that we've got our circle in, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to turn it into a 3D form. Now this is a sort of made up situation. So this sphere could be lit from any particular direction. And one good way to think of a sphere when you're working in this way, or a good thing to sort of use as a kind of reference point for what we're doing is if you think of the moon when it's in a crescent or as it goes into a full moon, so when it waxes and wanes, you have sort of a really sliver of a crescent as it's when it's just beginning, and then that gradually starts to kind of move towards being a half moon. And the reason that's changing is because the relationship of the moon to the sun is causing more or less of the surface of the moon to be illuminated. So when we've got a full moon, the sun's basically bouncing straight off. The direction of the sun is pretty much where we're looking from. So it's kind of passing overhead and we're looking at the moon completely illuminated. And then as it gets darker, eventually the sun is sort of on the other side of the moon, or it's blocked entirely. And when it's kind of being illuminated from the side, you get a crescent shape. So you want to sort of think of that. So that's where we're getting this form of the sphere from. You can also, another good thing to have a look at if you want to sort of see this in action is if you had a ball, ideally a ball that's just one single color, or an egg. Eggs are, even though they're not quite a sphere shape, an egg is a really good little object to look at in terms of form. And sort of look at, if you're going to move an egg around and turn it in the light, you'll sort of see how the shadow shape changes on the egg. And the idea of a shadow shape is really important to developing a sense of form, because we're going to have a single direction of light. So I'll kind of mark out where the light's going to be coming from. So the light's coming from up here. So I'm just going to turn my phone off so it doesn't beep again. So the light's coming from sort of the top right corner. That's where I'm going to say it's going to come from. And it's kind of tilting a little bit towards us. So the lightest point of the sphere is going to be here in this scenario. If we were working from life, all of this is already laid out in front of us. But we have to sort of determine that, because we're not working from life, we're creating a scene ourselves. So the light is coming from that top right corner. Now, that means that some of the sphere is going to be illuminated by that light source, and some of it will not be illuminated. So some of it will be what we call a shadow. So there's a certain point where the surface of the sphere starts to turn away from the light, and it gets darker and darker and darker, and there's a point where the sphere is no longer receiving any light, and that's going to be our shadow shape on the sphere.